If for some reason I get kicked off, then you know why.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Looks like all the members are here, so we'll get started. I'd like to call to order the June 21st, 2021 Macedonia Planning Commission meeting. Can we get a roll call?
Mr. Westbrook?
Here.
Mr. Schiavone?
Here.
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
All right. First item is approval of the May 17th meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments?
I'd move to approve them.
All right. Got a motion? Anybody else?
I'll second it.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Before we get into the agenda items, I wanted to make a motion to remove two of the items. I'll do them separately, but at the request of the applicant, IHOP has requested to be removed from the agenda. Make that motion to remove them from the agenda at their request. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
I think they're gonna jump in July. Is that what I heard?
Supposedly, we'll see. Yeah,
That's what it looks like.
yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Wait, Jason put his mug up to his mouth before I asked. And then,
All right.
at the request of the applicant, Panda Express has asked the same thing to be removed from the agenda for tonight and come back at another time. So I'll make that motion to remove them at their request.
I'll second that.
All right. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll get back to the regular items. So the first one up is Premier Martial Arts proposed signage. Is there someone here representing Premier Martial Arts?
Hello, Melinda Urco. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm representing Premier Martial Arts for Heritage Sign and Lighting.
Okay. Let me bring up plans. So that you had resubmitted plans, so the old ones. New plans are up there. Unless you want to share something different, just tell me what you want to see. If you want to just give us an overview of what's being planned here.
We plan to install a channel letter sign on the front of the building, change the name on the tenant, the hanging sign there, and some decals on their entrance with their logo. I think that's everything.
Okay. I assume this is like the temporary.
Yeah, temporary banner.
Okay. So there's the basic sign, and this is, I guess, just based on the one thing, this is in the old Hallmark spot, I guess, just from seeing this. But either way, you get the business is in, and they want to get their sign up. I think we had comments from Mr. France. He actually submitted some initial comments. You guys sent the new plan over, and he sent some new comments. He put those together today. Mr. France, do you want to go over those?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I did provide a brief updated report earlier today, and essentially my previous comments from my June 12th meeting have been addressed. The bottom of the sign being 15 inches from the bottom of the fascia, the revised plans illustrate that. The trim letters now are shown as the bronze as required by the criteria. The only issue that remains is the lime green sign faces, which is something pursuant to the Macedonia common sign criteria that the commission can approve, but does need to take a formal action on. I will say that I don't recall seeing window signage in my package of information that I reviewed, so I did not review the window signage. I'm just looking back now. I don't see it in my information I received.
So this would have been emailed.
It might not have been on my initial, we're just installing this for another company, so it might not have been on their initial plans to me either. Is that something that I would need to add to the application if they would wish to add those?
Need to be considered.
I mean, I think the commission could just approve it subject to, if that's okay. I'm quickly looking in, and it's, the requirement is 25%. The window signage can't exceed 25% of the total glass area.
Okay,
So, and then looks like there's a different color also mixed into here. So that would equally have to be approved by the commission, the yellow in addition to the green. It's likely area wise is probably fine, I think. Just quickly looking at it. So you could, if you were inclined, you could approve it subject to a final review of that window signage for area compliance, but you will need to act on both the green and then yellow as well.
Well, Kevin, can I ask a question?
Sure, please go ahead.
For the applicant, is yellow and those two colors, are those sort of your signage around wherever else your martial arts places are? Is that sort of the color you use?
I believe that is their brand logo approved color, yes. So that's what they use across all of their marketing materials.
Does Premier have other places around?
You know what, I'm not sure. I would imagine that they do, maybe not in Ohio, but I could find that out for you if you'd like.
Mhm.
I think I looked into it. I think they might have one other place. If I was looking, 100% sure. Anybody else on the commission have any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, it looks like they have locations in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania.
It's very prominently displayed with those colors and that logo, that style, the diamond shape, all that on their website, on the clothing, the uniforms of the employees and the participants, all that. So it's got to be part of their branding.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, based on that, I think I'd move to approve those colors if we have to give approval of that, the yellow and the green.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Well, does somebody want to, I guess, do we want to make a formal motion? We've got to include approval of the colors, and we've got to include subject to a final review of the window signage for area coverage.
Yes, I'll make that motion that we would approve the colors as submitted on the drawing, and then subject to final administrative approval by the department at the area coverage. And
All right. So we want to second that?
I'll second it.
All right. Any more discussion on that? Or Mr. France, any clarification needed on the motion?
No, I think that's a solid motion.
Well, I'm okay with those colors. I don't know if anybody has a problem. There any more discussion on that?
That's fine.
All right. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? None? All right. It sounds like we got approval. Yeah, so Mr. France will review that, look at the area just to confirm that it's not more than 25%. But like you said, it eyeballing it looks like you're going to be okay.
Great, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
Hi, Melinda.
Hey, Sam, how are ya?
Good evening.
Next up is T-Mobile. More signs.
Yeah, more signs. My name
Nice
is
to hear.
Theo with Agile Sign and Lighting, and I am representing T-Mobile for their rebranding change. This is one of our last T-Mobiles. A lot of them were actually already redone in 2020, last year. They had a little straggler left, and I was like, hey guys, what about the Macedonia location? So what they're doing is they're going to be taking down the black backer with the like diamonds and the old school branding of it, and they're doing something really simple. They want to install facelit channel letters onto the building. All their other locations have this similar look to them. It's a lot newer, it feels cleaner, and they're looking for you guys for an approval from you guys. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'm happy to answer them.
All right. Mr. France, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report's dated June 12th, and it is pretty straightforward. The permitted area for the signage is a little over 55 square feet. The sign itself is just a little under 30. White letters centered above the main entrance doorway, and see no reason why this can't be approved as submitted.
Thank you. Commission members, anybody have any comments or questions? All right. Anyone want to make a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the application as submitted.
I'll second.
All right. More discussion. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Easy one.
All right, guys, have a great night.
All right. Next is another sign, Target. Just you, Amy?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead. Give us a quick overview of this.
Sure. This is the multi-tenant sign for the crossings, the Golden Links crossing off of 82. And it's a face change of exactly what's there. Sign is going to be reversing out the colors. So it'll have a red background with white lettering. It's a brake metal sign, routed out, pushed through acrylic plastic lettering and logo.
So it's just on the one existing sign up front
Correct.
now. And I'm trying to think, does the new monument that's going over on the other side, does that have a Target panel when it gets built? It's not there yet, is it? Or is it there?
Not there yet, I don't think.
No.
I'm assuming they'll want to do the same thing if they've got a panel on that one as well. They'll want this logo, but okay, it's pretty simple. Mr. France, any thoughts on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report dated June 12th. This appears to be a branding effort by Target. Does impact just the large ground monument identification sign at the front of the development.
Can't do this. Probably text me.
Hello?
Sorry about that.
So the size, there's no issue with the size. There's plenty of identification signage permitted for Target given their building frontage. And so I don't see any reason why this can't be approved as submitted.
All right. Any questions from committee members? It's pretty cut and dry. If someone wants to make a motion.
Well, I'll make approve the application as submitted.
I'll second.
All right. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next sign is for Silgan Dispensing. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're planning here.
Okay. So my name is Gil Macias. I own Fast Signs in Twinsburg, Ohio. I'm representing Silgan Dispensing, who's going through a rebranding effort. Silgan bought Cobra Plastics late last year or the beginning of this year, and so they are requesting to update their monument sign and the sign that's in front of the building. So we are adhering to their brand standards, which has a logo in blue and their name in a gray with a white background.
Okay. Mr. France, you have comments on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report dated June 12th. As the applicant stated, they're updating the name from a acquisition by Silgan of Cobra Plastics. There's no concern with the area of the signage, both the ground monument as well as the wall sign. The concern that I do have relates to the architecture. Essentially, that metal panel will cover the existing brick monument. Great lengths have been taken over the years to present a nice monument sign. In my opinion, this should continue to be the highlight of the sign, and so the monument base would be seen with some sort of individual channel letters mounted to the sign, similar to Cobra Plastics, as opposed to a metal panel covering that signage. Same thing with the wall sign. No problem with allowing Silgan to have their brand, but just think that the architecture should be a little more quality than what's being proposed.
Great. Commission members, do you have any questions?
I have a question for Brian. Is our authority for aesthetics, which is what you're suggesting is wrong with that sign, it's 1179-13 with that design and construction. That's our, so we're allowed to opine on aesthetics. Is that how you're thinking, Brian?
I think you have the authority under 1172, chapter 1172, which are the architectural design standards, specifically 1172-02. So I do think that the city has that ability under the architectural standards.
All right. Well, that was the only question I had.
Could I ask the applicant, would they be open to what is being suggested and try to improve the look of that instead of just putting a big panel over it, to do something closer to what's there today?
So we did propose that initially, and there were a couple of challenges that we encountered. One, size of the sign was cost prohibitive to go into individual dimensional letters, both because of the number of letters, the logo, and the installation that would be required to do it individually. That was the first challenge. The second challenge that we wanted to address also was that the previous sign, the Cobra Plastic sign, has been up for many years, and so the sun has deteriorated the stone behind it so that it casts a shadow. So when we remove the old channel letters, which were stud mounted, there's going to be two things that are going to be present on the stone. One, the old penetration marks where the studs were for the previous signs, and the shadowing that has occurred because of the sun being blocked by the letters. So anything we place over it is going to cause two things. One, you're going to be able to see the existing penetration marks and the existing shadowing of the stone that has not received any sun. So we wanted to address those two factors in particular. And the way that we were going to overcome that was, one, keeping to their brand standards, which don't allow their logo to be on anything other than a white background or a blue background if we use if we change the PMS colors that are part of the brand standards. Putting their letters on brick that's a different color is not part of their brand standards, and so that's not something that they were under consideration at that point until this was raised. And also, aesthetically, we were, trying to avoid what the stone was going to look like after we put new lettering over it, because the old, as I mentioned, the old penetration marks from the previous lettering were going to be exposed, as well as the discoloration of the stone where the old lettering was. So we wanted to address that as part of our design. The way that we want to make the sign more aesthetically pleasing is one thing is the rendering says that it's a max metal panel. That's actually incorrect. The panel is actually a polycarbonate panel. So it's not there's no aluminum. It's not an aluminum composite material. It's a polycarbonate material that's actually going to be mounted standing away from the stone, so it'll look like it's floating. And then the letters, the logo and the letter will be actual cut vinyl. So from a dimensional perspective, there'll be some separation, even though it'll be small, but there'll be a distinction between the lettering and the logo as it's placed on the polycarbonate panel that will then be floated on the stone. So to give it some dimension and some depth.
So could I ask a question?
Please.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, because that was one of the things I was thinking about with it being a metal panel is 10 years from now, it's rusted and all that. So it sounds like that problem has been eliminated by what you just said.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm throwing this out, just my opinion, but is it possible to make the sign maybe a little bit narrower, both in width and height, so that some of the brick frames it a little bit more? Am I even able to suggest that, Brian? I was just throwing that out there.
Well, if I could chime in, absolutely. What we were trying to do is we were trying to make it as wide as the lettering, the old lettering was going to cause a discoloration on the stone. We wanted to cover that up, and any of the penetration marks. So we can adjust the size, the height, and the width of the white panel to only be big enough to cover any discoloration on the stone or any wear of the stone from the previous installation.
Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, Brian.
They equally could replace some of the stone. They could equally change the color of the stone if that's an issue as it relates to branding. I don't think covering up the sign is in the best interest of the city. We have lots of industrial businesses that put a lot of resources into their signage. I think covering this up is a disservice.
The only other factor that I would contribute to the conversation is we approached the customer with that option initially as part of one of the options that we proposed. It was cost prohibitive. They simply don't have the budget to do individual letters and to stud mount them individually into the stone.
It's hard to speak to somebody else's budget, I guess, but that's having a budget for signage that's somewhat reasonable. I mean, if this is a new business going in, they should have a budget to construct the entire, they're not having to construct the entire structure out there. They're not having to put the bed in and the wall and everything.
I think it's more than that, though, right? It's the monument sign is already up. As I mentioned, there'll be discoloration, there'll be penetration marks that need to be addressed. If those aren't addressed, those will be seen through the individual letters that we put up, because we won't be covering up the way you see Cobra Plastics there, right? If you look at their logo and you look at their lettering, we're not going to cover those letters. We're not going to cover 100% of that. Their logo, you can see through it, where that logo that you see on the monument sign is one piece, right? These are individual pieces that would actually see through the stone. The other thing, as I mentioned, their brand standards only allow the sign to be on a white background or a blue background. So painting painting the monument sign to be one of those colors, again, is not part of the budget that they were considering when they asked us to take this on. Right, and so we were adhering to a number of things. Right, the structure that we were trying to work with, what's on the structure today, which is the Cobra Plastics that we'll have to remove, and what we put over it to making sure that it's aesthetically pleasing.
I guess that's maybe where we differ is what we consider aesthetically pleasing. I mean, the sign that's out there right now looks nice. You can see the brick. It's not a big panel, even a smaller panel. It's a, you know, it's conveying the same exact information. It's got a logo. It's got the name of the company. It's got the address, but it looks nice. You compare that to, you know, a big piece of metal or a piece of, what did you say it was going to be?
Polycarbonate. It's a polycarbonate. It's what you see in most monument signs that you see everywhere in almost every business in Plaza uses polycarbonate, especially
This is a plaza that's got a light up board. This is a decorative stone monument sign that was intended to have raised channel letters on it and intended to be more aesthetically pleasing and not be covered up.
So I you know, we can make the panel as small as it needs to be in order to to cover what's behind it. What you're suggesting, I'm not opposed to what you're suggesting. What I'm saying is the cost to do what you're suggesting is 3 to 4 times more expensive than what the customer is undertaking right now. Because we're talking about individual letters that have to be fabricated individually and installed individually and painted individually. That factors a lot of cost and a lot of labor into the actual sign. And again, I'm not suggesting that what you're recommending isn't doable. It was part of the options that we presented. It wasn't the option that they selected for budgetary reason, and again to adhere to their brand standards, where their background needs to be white or blue.
Brian, could I ask a question? One more question to Brian. If we deny this, could this applicant then have to go for a variance? And how much would it cost them to file for a variance? I think there's a cost factor for that. I don't know if it's even allowable for a variance, but is that what they'd have to do, is go to a variance, Brian?
Yes, that if this application were denied by the Planning Commission, their administrative rights under the code is to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm not sure, Mr. Roddick's on. He might be able to tell us. I don't know what the city's fees are for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I think it's a couple hundred, isn't it?
Yes, I do believe it's a couple $100. Yes.
It's 200.
200, yeah.
Yep.
So that might be a factor for the applicant to, you know, if it costs them 200 to go to a variance, then they're not sure they're even going to get the variance.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm curious, do we have a ballpark of what the sign is proposed is going to cost?
The sign that we're proposing is I think they're $1,000 per side installed. The channel letter route, where we would have to fabricate the logo and the letters individually, including the address, because the address would have to be changed as well, because it's green today. So we'd have to change everything out. Right now, we're talking probably $6,000 to $7,000.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? Any commission members?
I suggest they go back to their applicant and see if they can possibly do it the way we'd like to do it and way our code requests us to do it. These monument signs are all over the city for a purpose, and you know, the city favors them.
And it's our job to kind of protect that.
Yeah, we'd definitely be taking a step back in terms of appearance. I think if we approved the sign as proposed, or even with a somewhat smaller panel, you know, Cobra went to the expense of building the monument, doing all the hard work up front, getting a good looking sign. I really don't think the kind of dollars that we're talking is unreasonable for improvements to rebrand the building and the monument. I agree. would prefer to have them go back and see if there's if they would propose something different, something closer to what we're used to seeing at this location.
So Matt, can I get some clarification so I know exactly what to tell my customer? What I'm hearing is that the only option that they would have to consider at this point without going through a variance is to go the individual channel letter stud mounted to the wall, which we already know is 2 to 3 times more expensive than what they're currently spending on their sign, right? Because is that what I need to communicate to my customer?
I don't know that I would say that that's the only option. I'm not a designer of these things. I don't know if there's something else that would look good or something else that's doable. I know that what we're seeing today out there is definitely probably our preferred, which is what you're describing, probably our preferred. And I don't know, in terms of the shadowing and things like that, if this could be power washed, if this could be acid washed, I don't know. Or does the whole brick thing, I mean, those blocks, especially when you're talking $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for the signage, I don't know that those blocks are crazy expensive to replace themselves. This is not like the monument sign that we were just looking at for the Target that's 20 feet tall, and this looks like about 20 or so bricks. It's not that crazy if they needed to replace that to get the better look and not have the holes. So I think this is something very similar to this, or if they have something else that they could think of. But I think the big panel, just mounting that right to it, to me, just does not seem acceptable.
So may I ask the gentleman that made the report, because he seems to have an idea of what that would be. Right now, the only options that I see as the sign maker, right, is either to put a panel with their branding on it, and try to use materials that are high quality, which is what we are proposing. It's not a metal panel. It's a polycarbonate panel that's stud mounted to the stone, so it stands away from it, and it has some depth. Outside of that, we would have to go into individual channel letters, and which is what you see with the Cobra Plastic sign. I don't know of anything that's in between. Based on my experience, if the gentleman that wrote the report has an opinion that I could share with my customer that he thinks would be approved, I would greatly appreciate that information.
I believe that the commission's expectation, as well as what I conveyed in my report, is that you do what you need to do to take the existing block, remove the shadowing, and put up stud-mounted individual channel letters and the logo, and present that image that currently exists for the Cobra Plastics.
Correct. Okay, and that's what I described, which is 2 to 3 times more expensive than what the customers request.
And I understand that. And, just a quick search, and don't take this the wrong way, but Silgan's 2020 net annual sales was $4.9 billion. I think a few thousand to fit into the architecture of the city of Macedonia, be a good business neighbor in the city of Macedonia, is a small request of this commission.
I completely understand. I'm not objecting to what you're saying. I'm 100%. As I mentioned, it was one of the options that we presented. They chose not to move forward with that. They chose with this option.
Yeah, and I understand. I appreciate the position you're in. It's what your client's asking. The commission could deny this request this evening, or then you would have to, of course, go the BZA route, or you could resubmit, which is a new application fee, or the commission could, at your request, continue to the next meeting to give you time to talk to your client and come back. Those are all the options I think that, are reasonable options for you to pursue.
Okay, so at a minimum, I'd like the continuation for sure, to at least have the opportunity to talk to my customer. And then find out whether they want to make the expense or they want to go the variance route. At this point, I can't speak for them because I can't speak for their budget.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So if you would like to request that continuance for time to talk to your client, you can make that request to the chairman.
Okay, I'd like to make that request. I'd also like to understand from the board members, if they don't want to go down the route of the individual letters, what is their course of action other than a variance? And if that variance gets denied, then where do we go from there?
I can answer the piece about the variance, the appeal to the BZA. If that were to be denied, your rights under the Ohio Revised Code is something called a 2506 appeal to the Court of Common Pleas, which is a administrative action to prove that the actions of the Board of Zoning Appeals were in error and not following law, and that would be your option as it relates to that.
Okay, I'm sorry, 2506, and could you repeat?
25 Revised Code 2506. It's an appeal to the Court of Common, Municipal Court of Common Pleas.
Okay, thank you. The reason I'm asking is because I've never gone down this route. Right, I've always. This is the first time that I'm ever having to go down this route where we're presenting. There weren't viable options other than something that was not something they wanted to pursue. So I will share the information with them if we can have the continuance, and then I can come back and would I then have to? How do I continue the conversation? Do I have to come back to this meeting a month from today?
You would just, if the motion will need, the planning commission will need to accept that request and make a motion to continue to the next meeting, the July meeting. And then you would just interact with Mr. Rodick in the building department and his staff and indicate what your determination is. If you choose to go to seek a variance, you don't even need to be denied. You can go directly to the Board of Zoning Appeals and request a variance as opposed to an appeal. And that's something you can communicate to the building department.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that request, is someone like to make a motion to table this to allow them more time to investigate?
I would so move to table the application.
I second.
All right. Any more discussion?
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, you are continuing this at the applicant's request to allow him time to speak to the client, and you're continuing it to the July 19th Planning Commission meeting.
Yes. Yes, if we amend the motion, I would say we table it and at the request of the applicant to the next meeting of the Planning Commission, which is in July.
Can I interject one more thing? Because we've only been talking about the monument sign, and I think the same concern exists about the front of building sign. And we've not discussed that.
Yes. In my opinion, it's the same issue.
Correct. It is the exact same issue. And so we haven't taken into consideration the size of that sign and the cost associated with those. So again, dramatically different. The previous sign, and again, I'm just sharing the information so everyone has the same information. The previous sign that was up there for Cobra Plastic was just the logo. It did not have their name on it. And so in this case, same guidelines. Their logo is not allowed to be presented by itself. It has to be presented with the name of the company. So Silgan Dispensing would need to be added to the sign, which again makes the sign at the size that we're proposing in order to have the same footprint as the previous sign very expensive.
Okay. Well, it kind of sounds like their own guidelines or their own rules are going to cause that to be a much more expensive endeavor than just being able to put their logo up.
So again, we haven't talked about this one, so I want to make sure that this is also part of the conversation.
Yes. In my opinion, other members, let me know if you feel differently or if you got a different opinion, but I think this needs to be the same. I think just a big square sign on the nice brick side of the building is not nearly as appealing as, this is just a logo, but, it's not on a big square of polycarbonate or steel or whatever. I think the correct look is to have the raised letters on the building as well, unless someone feels differently. It sounds there's not.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were tabling both decisions. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks. We still got to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? No opposed. All right. Well, thank you. And we understand. You are doing just. You're taking the wishes of the client, and hopefully you can bring our message back to them, and it's can be positive, and we can get this worked out.
Okay. Thank you. I will update the building department on my discussion with the customer and what the next steps will be.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All right. And then the next issue will be Dominion. I'm sure we've got some representatives here from Dominion.
Yes, sir. Ryan Smith.
Back again.
Yep.
All right.
Nice to see you guys.
Good to see you. I don't know if you want to, easiest thing is to kind of maybe go over what's changed. And I know before, I think you've put up a plan. I can let you do that again, or I can flip through if you want me to show anything.
No, this plan is good. I think if you just go to the next page.
Okay.
One more, actually. Sorry. Yeah, this is our proposed updated drawings based on our feedback we received the last time we met with the commission. We have two separate projects going on, just to refresh everybody's mind. One is a transmission pipeline project, and one is a maintenance storage garage project. At the request of the commission, we have combined our application. During that time as well, our northern project, the storage garage, they were already scheduled to be at the BZA, and they received a conditional use variance for that parcel. And based on our feedback, we have combined our applications. We are taking steps to combine our parcels. We're going to do a survey in the coming weeks and then work on combining those into one. We are showing screening on the frontage. And we were able to meet offline with Mr. France and address some of his comments and incorporate some of those things into our drawings as well. Mr. France, I don't know if you want to speak to those or just go over your report.
Sure. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, we have met and do appreciate the continued effort that Dominion is putting forth to work with the city. I think I saw Kurt Smock on here, and Kurt is the architect of record for the northern project, and he was on the call as well. So, yeah, real good effort by Dominion to work with the city. And really, I think, fast forward in my comments, I think that the commission could consider preliminary plan approval this evening, subject to just administrative items that needs to be worked out in anticipation of going for final plan approval, if that's something you would that you would allow. I know the city engineer's on. He has a number of comments and wants to speak through those as well. I can just quickly run through my report, and really there aren't a lot of items that remain. And my report really is June 12th, not May 12th, but my June 12th report, as Ryan indicated, the Dominion is going to combine the properties, which will cure the issue of setback problems and have it all on one parcel. They are treating the request graphically to show you as one project, even though there are really two, which is good, so we could see the full impact of the property. Just a few items remain, and the gravel surface area. And if I missed this the first time, I apologize, but there appears to be a lot more new gravel surface area. The code does require that be hard surfaced. I know the engineer is commenting on this as well, so that's a discussion point I think we need to have. And they may have applied for a variance for that already. And then there were just a couple of clarifications I was looking for. Sheet 3 indicates an existing electric vault and overhead catwalk, that those are being eliminated. Just want to confirm that's accurate. As well as then on sheet 3, there's a detention basin on the northern parcel, but that feature is also titled micro pool. I'm not sure what that, I've never heard of that term before, so just clarification of what that is. Lighting has been revised to comply with the city's standards, and as Ryan indicated, Dominion does intend to provide that continuous landscape buffer all along Shepherd Road. Quite frankly, details aren't provided at this time because the meeting we had, just the timing to get a landscape architect engaged, draw that up and show that mounding just wasn't able to get done for this meeting. But I do think that that's their intent, and we do appreciate that. And then just felt for clarification's sake, sheet 3, if going forward in the next plan submittal, if you could indicate in tabular format text, just sort of the existing conditions, what's being removed and what's being proposed. Very simple in a tabular format, just quick reference point on a site plan to show what's existing, what's proposed. As you flip back and forth between existing conditions and proposed, sometimes it's a little more difficult. Just capture those highlights, should be relatively easy. So with that said, I do believe a conditional preliminary approval is acceptable, provided action by the BZA is taken regarding the number of variances that are needed.
So, Mr. Francis, so specifically, is the action by the BZA the only thing we would necessarily need to mention in a preliminary approval, or do things such as the hard surface or the landscape, do those need to be mentioned, or are those just things to work out for the next submittal?
Yeah, I would recommend the commission, if they're inclined to provide a preliminary plan approval with conditions, just make it subject to my corrected date of June 12th memo, as well as I think Mr. Gelati has a memo and Mr. Bell have memos as well. So I would just reference the administration's comment memos, and if that's acceptable to the commission.
Okay. Well, then, before we get too far, Mr. Gelati, you have comments as well?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I put together my memo with review comments, which I think all commission members and the applicant have probably seen that memo already, so I won't review each individual item, but I will hit the important ones here on the meeting. Stormwater detention basin is shown for the storage garage portion of the project, but not for, I guess, what we're calling the southerly half or the station replacement portion of the project. So we would need the proper stormwater detention for the entire development site, not just the northerly half or the storage garage portion. As Mr. France had mentioned, the southerly portion does indeed show a very large area to become a new gravel area, which that's not allowed by code. Any new paved area needs to be asphalt or concrete, so that needs to be addressed. And then the proposed screening or landscaping, I see that it's been graphically added to the site plan, which is good. I think it's necessary or important. So it's up to the Planning Commission how to proceed there. Obviously, as Mr. France had indicated, we don't have any specific detail on the screening. Thanks, Chairman.
All right. Mr. Bell. Do you have comments?
Yes, sir. Just as the formal part of all that, once they get into the construction part, their plans will be reviewed to meet the Ohio Fire Code as listed in 2017.
All right, thank you. I guess I got a couple quick questions for the applicant. The gravel area that both the planner and the engineer are both saying need to be hard surface. Was that something, since we're not allowed to approve that, was that something you were going for a variance for, or is that something you guys were willing to do?
I think we will try to get a variance for that, at least some of it. We can hard surface what we can, some of that where you see transmission lines underneath. If we were to have an emergency, our crews can dig through soft cover. Hard cover is a little more complicated. So some of those critical transmission assets we would want to leave under soft cover. The gravel is really not a driveway or something that we will be driving on frequently. It's more, honestly, it is a cost savings mechanism for us. We don't have to mow as much grass. And we also don't like our maintenance folks who mow grass to get too close to live gas pipelines. So that's just kind of to keep some of that back. So it's not necessarily a driveway, but I think we will try to leave some of that gravel, especially where the transmission lines are underneath.
Not knowing all the details, that seems like a reasonable thing. If we could approve it here, I would suggest doing that. If there's an emergency, you don't want to have to get out the jackhammers to get to it.
Right.
This would be much easier. But yeah, if you can minimize that area, that would probably be in your favor, and something we'd probably like to see. Commission members, what questions did you guys?
I had a couple of questions. One, first, I guess I'll get to yours first, Kevin. Are you suggesting maybe they don't need variance for this gravel business if they just redefine it and they might not need a variance? We could approve it somewhat, or they have to get the variance for any change gravel asphalt.
I wasn't suggesting that. I was just saying that there's probably good reason behind why they want to do what they want to do. But I wasn't suggesting that it was something we could necessarily approve.
Have they already applied for variances, and were they already applied for some variances, and what was the ruling? Were variances already applied for?
I think there were some variances applied for. Is that right? But
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I believe they applied for variances and received some on the northern project, and they are in for variances on the southern project.
So where does the gravel fit in? The northern or the southern?
The gravel's on the southern, and it was our intention to request the Board of Zoning Appeals extend the conditional use variance to our southern parcel, which will apply to one parcel after we combine them. And we were going to ask for the use variance for the gravel.
So, and just from the problem with the gravel is it's an aesthetics thing typically, right? But they're explaining to us there's also a functional reason for it. Am I understand that correctly so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, and again, we're not Board of Zoning. I'm just kind of talking through this. But one of the things that I was more concerned about this project, and it's being addressed, and we'll talk about that, is the proposed landscaping, any mounding, all that. So is the gravel as big of a concern to Board of Zoning if you can't really see it from the street in the residential area around there? I would think maybe not, and then that maybe makes it a little bit easier for them to get that variance from Board of Zoning. I'm just talking out loud.
I think part of it is an aesthetic thing, for the requirement, and part of it's probably a functional thing. If an area has a big giant parking lot and they're driving trucks all over and it's all gravel, it eventually turns to mud, and then now you're dragging it on the roads. And so there is, but if they're not driving on it a bunch, maybe that's a case that well maintained or something. I don't know.
Got it. And then the other question I have is, I appreciate what you guys said earlier about it. There just wasn't enough time to get a landscape architect's plans, but do we get to a point where we get to see that and make sure that it's meeting our needs? And not just the 5 or 6 trees that are out there now, or when do we get to see that?
Yeah,
Gentlemen, if you will, if I could, Ryan.
Yep.
This is Trevor Roth, project manager with Dominion for the northern portion, and I did just receive, I believe it was Friday, a basic landscaping plan from the architect. It does not have bed depths or anything on that, but if you'd like, I can share that so we can you guys can see that. It also has the call outs for, what kind of vegetation they'd like to put in.
Yeah, you can throw it up there. I mean, we'll have to have, the city staff review it,
Yep.
but at least give us
we will submit it. We just got it here. Throw it up here. Oops.
But if I can also, Mr. Roberts, I think Dominion's intent is to submit this for your July meeting.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll have a chance to review it. We'll have a chance to review it before we come back together again, it sounds like, right?
Oh, for sure. And
Okay.
and Ryan, I don't want to misspeak, but I think that was based on our meeting we had, that was your intent.
Yes, absolutely. We will, Dominion's committed to doing whatever the board will request as far as screening. Like Trevor said, we have a plan here, but we can change it based on recommendations.
Got it. Yeah, I'm just saying, like I mentioned, my goal there is to try to conceal that as much as possible, but then also try to move this along. You guys have been working on this for a while, and I'm sure you'd like to get this completed as soon as possible. So
This is the plan here that covers the whole frontage, all the way over to the existing vegetation that's right up here to the north, and spans across the whole front. And then here's just a basic rundown of what they said as far as what they would like to put in. Like I said, we'll get this submitted over to you guys here as soon as possible.
That would be great. One other thing that was brought up, I assume you got copies of the architectural review comments. Is that correct? Did you guys see those?
Yeah.
So they were pretty strong, I guess you could say.
Brutal. And I would call it brutal.
and I don't know, in my opinion, and commission members, again, you guys can say what you think. We're asking to put significant landscaping to somewhat hide those. But then, on the other hand, we're also asking, hey, make these buildings beautiful. If you're making them beautiful, I don't know that we'd ask you to hide it. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of middle ground. Do the landscaping. Is there something you could do to the buildings to make them not just, steel pole buildings? Is there something decorative or, without going to tons of expense, because we are asking you to do a lot? Is there something that could be done to them without maybe going quite as extensive as the architectural review request? And maybe that's something you need to think about. Maybe it's not something you could throw out right here, but if you're willing to, we'd be happy to listen.
And on the northern project, can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I was having difficulties with audio before. On the northern project, we do have a brick wainscot, for lack of a better term, off the ground about 4 feet or so, ringing the entire building. But obviously with the nature of the beast being pre-engineered metal, the siding is, pretty much what you get. The staff or the crew area just to the north of the actual garage portion, that's got a little more delicate detailing with some sunscreens and horizontal siding and so forth. That's a little more architectural in nature. We could look at doing something similar to the actual pre-engineered building, just changing the siding, design, which would maybe bring the scale of it down a little bit or something like that, or changing colors. You know, I've had projects where I've changed the color between the bays or something like that. They have the vertical pillar a different color. They're just kind of a little more subtle variation on the building, because right now it's a big massive block of, you know, gray or brown or whatever. So it'd be interesting. I don't think the Dominion's going to want to pay for, you know, putting brick up the entire thing. That would just be economically not viable. So, but yeah, we can look at various relatively inexpensive ways to actually change the look of it, I guess you could say.
If they're willing to do that, I would suggest doing that. It's my opinion, you know, and maybe work with the administration. The mayor often has a pretty good feeling on these kind of things. You know, he's the one that's got to listen to people complain the most out of anybody. So
That's right.
I think what you're suggesting is a very reasonable. You know, I think.
Okay.
You know, so I would maybe propose something like that and work with the administration. I would be okay.
Yeah,
with
we'll work. Ryan and I'll work together, and we'll make his beautiful buildings beautiful. So.
Okay. Commissioners, any other thoughts on that? Am I going down the wrong road?
I think it's a great idea.
Right. A compromise.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else we're missing here, commission members? Do you have any other questions? This would be what we're looking for is a preliminary plan approval. So not, you know, they'll definitely be back with a lot of these details.
Right.
Kevin, I have a couple comments, if I may.
Please do.
On the one plan that you showed with the utilities on it, on the site plan, what I'm asking the client is, in an effort, can we have an effort to try to minimize the gravel area? I'm going back to the gravel area again. Is there any way to, and I'll use the term loosely, consolidate the piping or utilities underground that are traveling from one end to the other or whatever, to minimize the gravel area? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, I do understand.
Yeah. Is that possible at all, or is that something that is totally dependent on your configuration of what I see on the, I guess it would be the west side and the east side?
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot move those pipes on the west, but I absolutely can minimize or bring together that area between into more of a driveway size distance back as much as possible. It can extend a little less further to the north and kind of go around as needed.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I think anything you can do to make an attempt to try to do that would be helpful. I think that's what you're saying. You know?
Yeah, generally we can bring that in a little bit almost everywhere. We can kind of shrink it up.
Yes.
And I'm saying this with all due respect to the fact that these are, for lack of a better term, critical utilities. And they have to be installed in such a way that should something happen, that you have to be able to get to them quickly as possible. And I'm just looking for this, like again, middle of the road solution here, because we do want some it can conform to the code where it says, you know, hardcore or hard surface paving, but we don't want to do that and sacrifice safety at that time. That was my point, sir.
All right, thanks. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Applicants, yeah, I think I'm going to make a motion that we give a preliminary plan approval subject to these administrative memos and the issues brought up in them. But is that seem acceptable to you guys? Is that what you're kind of looking for? And then you'll find out a little bit more information. Is it tomorrow the BZA, or is it Wednesday the BZA this week?
That is absolutely acceptable to us. I think we're getting on the July BZA.
Okay. All right. Well, if anybody has any thoughts, I will make a motion to give preliminary plan approval subject to the technical memos, the administrative memos by the engineer, the planner, and the fire inspector, and the issues contained within. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Cox. Mr. France, you hear anything different?
No, I think I heard that motion properly, and it also included subject to the Board of Zoning Appeals actions on the needed variances.
Yes, that's exactly what you heard. Thank you.
That's a solid motion.
Any other discussion? Any other questions?
Could I review what BZA variances we'll be going for? Because I know that, I don't know, Ryan, if you.
That's a good
You know,
question.
it'd be a good idea to know what we're going for, you know?
Yeah, so you have the hard surface issue, and then you had some setback issues on the northern parcel. You have the use issues. And I don't think I think that's it. You eliminated the outdoor storage, is that correct?
Right, and the setback issue actually was granted by the BZA last time.
Yeah, okay.
So I thought there was like wasn't there something like a, the gravel area? Oh, the conditional use. Now, I guess
I don't know what that is.
Right now, we have a conditional use for our northern property, but they do not have it, technically speaking, for the southern property.
I still don't understand that. I don't know what that term has been thrown out a few times. I don't know what that means. So your use is not, it's just not a use that's allowed in the RP or the R1 district. And so you're getting a use variance, which is just a variance. There's there's no conditional use, which is a use that's permitted in a district with certain conditions. I don't think that's the case here. So it just could be, yeah, it could just be a term that's, being misused. But I think you're just getting use variances because your only choice was use variance or rezone the property. And I think we sort of concluded it didn't make sense to rezone, but because it's a referendum zoning matter, it just made sense to try to get the use variances, which I thought you got on the north, and then you just needed to try to get that on the south, and it makes a whole lot of sense being that they already approved the north.
Right, correct. And I think Bob Rodick, I think, said, or somebody, maybe it was Chris Hall, said that because my understanding is the southern portion is actually in a R1 district, and we're in an RP district on the north. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I'd have to go back and look again, but I think there is some portion of R1 on the northern project as well, but it's really irrelevant. The use is not allowed in either of those districts, and those districts are effectively the same type of district.
Okay, so we'd be going for a use variance and then the gravel area size variance.
That's what yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. Friday's the deadline, so I just want to make sure we get a letter together and all that kind of stuff. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Chairman.
That's good discussion. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Mr. Roberts?
I just have to ask, this is not even relevant to probably any of this, but I noticed on the plan that we call this a Twinsburg station replacement, but it's located in Macedonia. I was just wondering, just curious on that.
That is a historical name that I believe predates Macedonia from the early 50s.
Yeah, I think it was. I believe I had the same exact question.
Change that. I don't know. I personally like having you as a neighbor in the city, so let's put the name on it.
You'd be surprised what changing that name would entail.
I imagine.
Yeah.
So that's
big corporate. Yeah.
They'd probably put another sign thing on our future agenda too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
I was just curious. Thanks for answering that, guys. Appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. So we've got the motion and a second.
Second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thanks, guys. Actually, probably the next time we meet, we will be in person.
Okay.
So, that'll be exciting. I guess.
Yeah.
You can tack on an extra hour that you'll lose that night.
I can have a pants on then. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, back to our agenda. The other two things we already eliminated.
I think we did. They moved.
Air test. So that's it, unless somebody has anything new.
Are we being recorded? I was going to ask something about the IHOP, but is it still?
We are still officially.
I will not then.
We could motion to adjourn, right?
Yeah, if someone wants to make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Although I will mention we probably should not again discuss anything. I mean, if we want to discuss anything, we probably